So when I go back to the Netherlands, I started to look for something else. I thought there's got to be another way. Yeah, I cannot sustain this physical yoga. I was only 32, but I thought I cannot sustain this. It's not possible.
Yeah.
And I don't want to teach this because this is going to hurt people as well as hurting myself. So it was very early days in internet, at least in my life. And I remember we had this mushroom that was like a modem and it was huge and internet took forever. But I started looking and I found the Yoga Biomedical Trust in London. And of course, I lived in London for so many years. I thought, oh, this is it. This is for me. When I read about it, I immediately, Yasmin,
You knew.
I knew. And I thought, okay, I've got to go here. So the following 2 years were a little bit crazy again, because I had to travel to London back and forth. I had a young baby, so either she'd come with me or, my mother or my mother-in-law would come and take care of her, or back and forth. It was very challenging. We were 50 students in the class.
Wow.
Only 17 graduated at the end of it.
Oh, how long was the course?
It was a massacre. 2.5 years, something like that. And it was the teachings were spectacular, because Dr. Robin Monroe, who unfortunately recently passed away, and Dr. Ruth Gilmore, so doctors who were doing yoga.
Yeah.
It was a pioneer course. It was like very rare. And they have other fantastic teachers, Anna Blackmore, and also Lisa Cayley Isley as well was there. Uma Dinsmore Tooley. She was there also as a student, as a teacher. Her husband was a teacher near Lipta. She just had a baby, so she was breastfeeding also. Well, it's funny because there's only 2 days difference in our birthday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And I think at least our babies must be now the similar age. And I had yoga nidra for the first time. What is this? And the learnings were so different, Yasmin. I was really worried because I thought, oh my God, I'm not like these people. There were a lot of Ashtangis, by the way. And you would come into the class and somebody would be doing, a headstand or a stand, or, as you went to say hi. And there was me with my muscle issues and my, and I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to perform. Wow, I didn't know that everything was taught in such a simple manner, very slow, some philosophy, but a lot of medical studies, a lot of medical knowledge. And we had to, at the time, have also some practical experience in working at a doctor's office or with a doctor or a hospital.
Oh, that's amazing.
So I volunteered with Dr. Robin Monroe at his NHS. Well, he had a clinic connected with the NHS for people with back pain.
Yeah.
So I volunteered on that, and we did fantastic work, and he did fantastic work, and I learned. And I had a knife for backs and for bodies. So to see, okay, this is the area with the cubital hernia, this is the area that has a spasm, this is the asymmetric, and maybe because I had a knife of fashion.
Yeah, people's posture and the way they hold themselves.
I have no idea, but I can. It's always been one of my favorite areas to work in. To see this architecture of the body. Yes, some people always say to me, "How did you see that?" I don't know, but I see that one shoulder is higher than the other. I can see how they're standing. I can see, right? So yeah, and then the so much hard work. And Yasmin, I'm saying this because a lot of people who do or want to become yoga therapists, they think that they can do it quick and easy. And it is hard. It should be hard work. Yeah. It really should be. You really need to learn. I mean, I remember studying for hours and hours and hours and learning every single muscle of the body. And and we had no Google. So
a library with textbooks and
oh my God. And I know that some of our students, they go, oh, you didn't upload the materials. And oh my God, we need to turn up. You were lucky if you got some photocopies of a part of a book.
Wow. It was
lucky if you got a photocopy of something. Okay.
Yeah.
You had to immediately, like whatever the teacher was saying, you better be quick writing it, because that was it. There was no replay. And the teacher they would finish teaching and then they would go home. So there was no kind of like saying, oh, I didn't understand. No, get it or leave it. And then maybe the day after you might be lucky. So you had to be really quick. Your mind had to be really kind of like on it. And it physically and mentally was an effort.
And do you think that might have contributed to so few people graduating from your course, just the quickness and that volume?
Correct. I really think so. You had to be with all your senses there. And also there were a lot of people who reacted against it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we had a lot of people, like I said, from Ashtanga, maybe harder core backgrounds. And when they started to do yoga therapy, they were thinking they had different expectations. I think they thought that yoga therapy would be using these advanced yoga practices that they had learned to do therapy. And it's like, no, those advanced yoga asanas and even breathing practices, you had to,
bring
them back in and take a lot of layers off. And then we started to bring case studies, or sometimes you have to learn with somebody. I remember I worked with this taxi driver called John. He was a cab driver. And John, he couldn't move. I'll never forget him. He had a big belly, and he was like, and I just got him to do half downward dog against the wall, barely. And I remember someone walked out of the room because it was all so slow. We were going so slow. I know nowadays you wouldn't think about that, but it was all so slow and so gentle.
Yeah.
And then, I was like, okay, take a moment to breathe. And I remember this woman just like, just walked out. Like, this is not yoga. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was really fascinating. The exams were really hard. Oh my God, I still have them. It was really hardcore. But who would have said to me that one day that course became the basis of our training in the Yoga Therapy Institute? So at the time, I had no intention of doing that, of course, but I started almost straight away to work as a yoga therapist. And that was, about, maybe 20 years ago, a little bit longer. And I started straight away. I just thought, okay, this is it for me. And I started with my neighbor. I'll never forget it. I mean, for €5. And then my neighbor brought her husband with back pain, and then the other one brought another one, and then the other one brought another one. Yes, Yasmin. Yes. And I always say to people when they say, oh, your Instagram. And I said, to this day, I don't have my own Instagram account. I have it for the school. And I don't have my website, but still I work as a yoga therapist because I work from recommendation.
Yeah. You don't need to advertise because you've worked with so many people. And
if you work with somebody and they feel better, their pain improves, they recover, they can sleep, they will tell somebody.
Mm-hmm.
The next time they speak to a friend, they say, you need to go to Montserrat. And Yasmin, I always say that to the students, people are not going to come to you maybe because of yoga therapy. They're going to come to you because of you. And if your training is yoga therapy, yes, then you're doing it with the tools of yoga therapy. But so many clients of mine didn't know that I was a yoga therapist. They call me their yoga teacher. Or the other day, oh my God, I have this client. I've worked with her now for weeks, and she says, I can't make the appointment for Pilates. And I'm like, this is not Pilates. I'm like, this is not Pilates, woman. But I didn't tell her though. She thinks she's doing Pilates. She's doing therapy for the menopause. I'm like, okay. So yeah, it's the training, it's the love that you put in it, knowledge, constant learning, and dedication. And I think that maybe one of the problems we have, not with everybody, that of course we just want to, I want to learn this really quickly. I have a 200-hour. How quickly can I become a yoga therapist? It's a long training. And the biggest, I would say I have a PhD in this field because I've worked with hundreds of people in my little room. There's a beautiful room overlooking a canal in Amsterdam. You can just imagine it. And it's all white. And people come in. I was literally there like okay, who's next? Boom, they would come in. I would get them a cup of tea, get my yoga therapy session, do normally an hour and 90 minutes. And I developed my own system in a way from what I learned to the Yoga Biomedical Trust and from what my clients were bringing me. Their stories. I learned about human stories that people will come in and they will be, oh my God, trauma was not even mentioned at the time, but you started to hear the incredible stories of trauma, disease, illness, and how it affected them, their family. I started to develop my own intake based on what I had learned originally in my training, but then from life experience.
Yeah.
I need to ask a question about, have you ever been exposed to a traumatic event? Now, that is something I was never trained.
I was going to say, was because 20, 30 years ago, trauma was not something we talked about.
You know what the question was? Have you ever suffered abuse? That was the question that was there. Okay.
Wow.
So, but 20 years ago, that's the question you asked.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever suffered abuse? So then I started to realize, this is a tricky question. And, have you ever been exposed to abuse? Have you ever been exposed? So the language started to change until eventually it became, have you ever experienced or witnessed or been exposed to a traumatic experience? So that's the phrase that we use now.
Yeah.
But I started to change it. I started to change everything and adapt it to working with human beings. And I'm talking about at some point I was working with 7 people a day, 7 days a week.
Wow, that's intense.
Back to back. I separated from my husband. I kind of became a little bit like a single mom because I was the main carer of my daughter for circumstances, nothing to do with my husband. He's lovely, but for whatever circumstances it was for his work. So then I had my mother who came over and helped me. And it was so wonderful because I'd be working in the studio at the beginning. It was in an attic. And then I would come downstairs and there was my mom with my daughter. My mother had cooked a Spanish meal. So I have very fond memories of that. But oh my God, the work.
Yeah.
The work. I have books and books and books of writing all these cases and the connections that you could make. And Yasmin, there was, for example, one incredible connection that I made, which was, for years, I've started to connect the dots between trauma and in some cases, experience of abuse, autoimmune disease, and chronic pain and joint hypermobility. And I kept on thinking, I am seeing these cases with hypermobility in women mainly, and I see traumatic events and hypermobility. And I see chronic pain and hypermobility. And I'm seeing autoimmune disease and hypermobility. And I recently saw a study, I think it was just recently, already in 2025, just been published, which connects trauma, an experience of trauma, chronic pain, and hypermobility of the joints.
Interesting.
And I remember I shared it and I said, finally, I had been seeing that. But of course, as a yoga therapist, that I said, well, I'm seeing a lot like this. So of course, it's not an empirical research kind of like anything that you could publish in a paper, but that I have already been writing, and I was already teaching it to people and saying, I'm just saying from my experience, this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing hypermobility of the joints and the experience of trauma.
The power of observation and linking those stories and really seeing people as humans and listening to what they have to say, which in so many areas of their life they're not listened to.
Of course. So so it's been unbelievable. Mental health illnesses that nowadays you would say, it will be beyond the scope. I also learned about the scope of practice the hard way, like saying, by having people with psychosis and experiencing them in my place And I started to also make the connections between, of course, hey, clinical depression and antidepressants. In those circumstances, some meditative practices in yoga nidra may be contraindicated because I've had reactions, of people. And so that's when I started to, and all of this, I always wrote it down, and I wrote it, and I made my own kind of clinical studies and blah, 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 blah. And then one day, Yasmin, I was teaching, and two events happened which were very crucial to what the continuation of this, which was, one of them was that there was a yoga therapy conference that happened in Amsterdam. And you can imagine when I discovered this, I was like, what? A yoga therapy conference in Amsterdam? I thought, you mean there are other yoga therapists out there? I was like, really, as long as I was concerned, only 17 of us graduated.
Yeah, and there was
a medical trust. And as far as I was concerned, there was nothing else in the world except maybe me and another 16 people out there.
Yeah.
So
you were the pioneer until
I was the lone ranger of the yoga therapy. I was like, what? There's other people? So I was like so excited. So I went to this yoga therapy conference of 400 people that were there in a church, blah, 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 organized by someone from the Netherlands who had very cleverly caught up, realized yoga therapy is the next big thing. She's a very clever lady. And then she organized it. And I went to this talk, and I was like, I don't think anybody here. I mean, the talk was not really about yoga therapy. It was about research on yoga and medical thing, but it wasn't about yoga therapy. So I started to get a little bit, why is this called yoga therapy? So I stood up when they said, do you have any questions? And of course, I stood up and I went, and then I said, I just want to ask, who is here at yoga therapy? In front of 400 people, I said, please raise your hand, all of those of you who are qualified as yoga therapists. Not one.
Wow.
Not one. Not even the speakers. So then I went,
so what was the aim of?
It was marketing, because this person who organized it knew that yoga therapy
was the next. Yeah.
So it was all promoted, like the first yoga therapy conference in Europe and blah, blah, blah. So it was very clever. So I have to be thankful for that, because then I said, okay, I'm a qualified yoga therapist. I, qualified with yoga, and I gave a speech, blah, 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 blah. And then at the end of it, I had a queue of people coming. I said, I want to know more. I want to know more about this. So as a result of that, there was one yoga teacher who came one day to me, contacted me and said, Montserrat, I learned about you from the conference. Could I come and observe your work? Nobody had ever asked me that. And I said, well, my work is very private with my clients, so I have to ask my clients. And so I did, and there were a few that said, no problem. This girl was really, really lovely and very respectful. So she sat in a corner while I was doing my yoga therapy. And then we would go for walks afterwards. And then one day she said to me, Montserrat, you have to share this with other yoga teachers. You have to train people to do this.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? And she was like, yeah, you have to. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe. And the final push was a client, Caroline Timpson, who I finished my session with her, and lovely lady as well. And she almost became a friend. She put her arms around me and she said, you have to share this. And then when, between these yoga teachers and that, and then this client telling me this, I thought, this is it. And that is how I said, let's do it. And just like everything on this earth, I guess that I've done is like, once I decide, then, I go full on. So everybody around me better hang on, because I feel sorry for the people around me. My personal relationships have never been so successful, I think, because once I get into a project,
full force.
Either you jump with me and I'm going off on my own. So yes, and what was fascinating was that I had exactly the program in my mind. It was based on the Yoga Biomedical Trust. I went back to my files because I keep everything. Went back to my files when I studied, and I decided to divide the program in the body systems. It was a little bit different to how the Yoga Biomedical Trust had done it, but I thought, okay, cardiovascular, nervous system. And now I've seen so many programs and so many, they're all, even recently I saw a book which was yoga therapy for the body, and it's divided in like, so it's like the model.
So when you were setting up the Yoga Therapy Institute training, you only had the one course there was nothing else out there at all.
Nothing else. There was just the one course, and
Pioneer Mons, everything.
there was only the one course.
Gosh, wow.
And my experience, and one course from folders from like, it was like, but I put it all together, adding what I had learned through the years, like, and mental health was one of them, for example, that I started to think mental health was not in the course that I learned.
So there was no mention. It was all physical.
No mental health. Of course, you mentioned the Manamaya kosha, and there was some aspects of Ayurveda. You learned the course of, for example, there was like the subject of the main cause of disease is in the mind, in the Manamaya kosha. But then in my experience, I said to see, well, wait a minute, there's also accidents. You cannot tell me I see it from an Ayurvedic perspective. The origin of disease is the Manamaya kosha. But actually, when you work with real people, you start to see, I don't know, a flower pot fell in my head, or whatever. And then you go, or for example, what happens when things happen to little children, or, and then you go, Manamaya kosha, I'm not sure. So I started to add a little bit my own kind of like interpretation based on real life experience. And I thought, yes, we need to have a course. I didn't know it was trauma at the time, but I thought I wanted to have an aspect that it was about the mind.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, I wrote the program, I prepared it. Oh my God, it took so much work. Yasmin, I mean, really, it was like from scratch. And then I thought, I have to be very honest with you. I can't remember how this was promoted because I didn't have Instagram.
No.
I didn't have, and now to this day I go, how did we do? We got 5 students.
Wow.
One was a client of mine, I remember.
And then was one of the lady shadowing? No.
No, she wasn't. She just went off to do her thing because actually she liked massage. She inspired me. She came like a fairy godmother and told me, you need to do this. Boom, yes. Yeah, and we had 5 students. And at the time, well, my life was crazy. I was with a new partner, and we were living in a house with 3 kids and 2 dogs, and doing all of this as well.
Full on.
Yeah, life was really quite active, exciting, but active. And so anyway, we ended up with 5 students. And one of them was the girlfriend of the music teacher. It was like, blah, blah, blah. And I found this place in the Vondel Park in Amsterdam called the Rose Center. And it was a really cold room with a blackboard.
Blackboard, yeah.
I was so excited. I was one of those students who wanted to, when I was in the class, I was very naughty. But if I could avoid school, I did. And but I always wanted to be in the blackboard. And then
yeah.
I loved it. And I loved drawing as well. So I would always do drawings and da da da. And I was so excited. I had my own blackboard and I had those 5 students. And it was, I can't tell you, it was wonderful. It was in this park, and the room was awfully cold, and we had to always wear blankets, but the learning had begun. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And then I started to hear about the IYT, the International Association of Yoga Therapists, and I thought, okay, I want to get my program accredited.
Yeah.
But it involved some kind of investment, and I didn't have it. I remember it was 4,000 euros, and I spoke to a client of mine, and I was just mentioning it to him and saying, yeah, I want to do that. And he said, how much do you need? And I went, oh, don't be silly. How much you need? And I said, oh. And I said, well, 4,000 euros if you want to, because I needed to fly to the US to the conference, present ourselves and to the IYT conference. At the time, that's how it worked. And so he turned up the day after with.
Oh,
I had helped him.
you.
I had helped him and his wife with their health, particularly with him. His health was a bit poorly. And again, a man from India. Even though kind of like I dodge India, then somehow India comes to me. And then I ended up going to Washington, D.C., to Virginia, actually, and that it was the IYT conference. And I was so happy to meet these incredible humans. I was a little bit about going to the US because Trump was already in power. We don't talk politics, but it was a little bit like, I was like, what is the US going to be like? I worked in the US for many years before. But they are really, I can't say more about them. They were welcoming. And at the time, Amy Wheeler, I think she was, in the board. And it was unbelievable. And I learned so much. And I learned that a lot of them are volunteers. And that they're really helping a lot of people. They've started to work in hospitals. And I thought, yes, I want to accredit my program in this. So I applied for this. We became the accreditation. I can't even tell you how hard it was. It was you have to fill out like 200 documents describing. At the time, you had to describe every 15 minutes of your program.
Oh my.
800 hours.
800 hour.
100 hours at the time. Every 15 minutes had to be described. Yes, in this board that was like insane. And my dear friend Sam, who is a film producer, just to give you an idea, she's a film producer, and she was doing yoga as well. She volunteered to help me. Now, to be a film producer, you have to be extremely organized. They're the best people to get things done. Huh? She came in and she said, I'm going to do it. The two of us sweating, like, in the summer. I'll never forget it, getting all this stuff done. And it was so inspirational. And that's when the idea of the trauma came. And then I had already met Esther van der Sander, who runs a trauma program. Yeah. And it was so much creativity, so much. And as long as I was concerned, nobody else in the world was doing this. It was us. I never look at other programs. That is true. Maybe I should, but I never look at what
others. You do your own.
I do research, of course, and look at what science is saying. That's really important for me. But I think that, and as a matter of fact, a lot of times I find programs that they look similar to ours, and I go, it's because the energy is out there. It's like we're all doing very similar work. If I'm working with people, and this is what I'm learning, I know that you in Colorado are going to be working with people, and that's what you're going to be like. You're learning the same. We're learning from practically the same human pot. Yeah. So we're all going to be finding the same. So I don't waste my time going into some. In fact, people say to me, do you know so? I said, I know nothing. I know nothing about yoga people. Nothing. I know about human beings, the human beings that I work with. And of course, our students now from all over the world. So yeah, it was Yasmin, I have to say, I left my skin there literally. But it's so exciting, so exciting.
But you've also set up a 200-hour training as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something that we've been wanting to do for a long time.
Yeah.
Why? Because we felt that the 200-hour yoga teacher trainings out there, they were lacking substance. They were lacking. You see, we had an advantage, which is we were already looking at it from the yoga therapy perspective. Yeah. And when you look at it from the yoga therapy view, you go, the yoga teacher trainings, right? They're way behind. They're like, that this is outmoded. Yeah. We need to have modern thinking in yoga teacher trainings that really look at humans in a different perspective rather than just the asana. And we always had that in mind, and we never did it. And then we had this wonderful student, Manuk Tiedemann, who joined our courses. And she qualified with us. And she also has a lot of other trainings. And bright young girl. And Caroline, one of our teachers, said, we need to keep an eye on Manouk. She's good. She's good. Manouk for us. Manouk for us. Like, for us.
Don't lose her.
Exactly. I was like, And then, like everything that has happened to me in my life, I remember I was exhausted from working. And one day I go to bed, and I thought, please, if there's some kind of, I don't know, universe there, can you please bring me a teacher? I need another teacher that teaches anatomy and physiology in my place because I'm so tired. I'm working so many hours. I wake up in the morning, I get a message from Manouk saying, hi, Mons. I was thinking, is there anything that I can do for you? She knows that I got her and said, I can't believe it, Manouk. I just woke up last night. I asked the universe to send me somebody. And you're there going, can I do something for you? I thought, she loves anatomy and physiology. She started to teach it. And then one day she came to us and said, how about if I lead the yoga therapy training, the yoga teacher training for you, 200 hours. We said, okay, but it's your thing. Because, we wanted a name, sources, resources, everything that you need, but you have to take care of it because
You've got so much else to do.
And she said, okay, I'll do it. And phenomenally successful, and he's doing so well. And she's something else. Manouk is, I don't know, can't explain. Like another great creature working.
Yeah, I looked at some of the videos on YouTube and I was like, oh, I'd really love to be able to go to that course because it looked amazing.
You want to do it again, right? You want to be a yoga teacher again. You want to do that training again.
Right.
Phenomenal, fantastic. So that was so we're going from there, and we have big plans as well. A lot going on, Yasmin, and I know that you're going to do some teaching with us, which we're so happy. And there's a lot of plans. We have a new learning platform online, which maybe in another occasion, actually, I would like to maybe discuss about what it's like to teach online. And
such a hot topic.
Very hot topic. Why? Because I was just listening to this podcast with Dr. Chatterjee, and they were talking about how the experience of education in online teaching or educational experience is so poor. And I go, that's because you haven't been to our classes. They say, oh, there's no sense of community. I go, that's because you haven't been to our classes. So I almost want to send him an invitation to say, Dr. Chatterjee, just come to our classes, and then you will see the experience of teaching in an exciting community-based manner with everybody participating. Everybody knows each other. And I think that that's something definitely where I feel that we are pioneers in that.
And I think that's really interesting because I do some teaching for a medical school. And at the moment, I'm just writing a lecture for them for May, but they've given me the online course they got given during COVID. And it is so dry. And there is no community. There's nothing. And I'm like, that's how you don't do online teaching.
That is how you don't do it.
The opposite from what's been created at the Yoga Therapy Institute.
Yeah, completely. Like, it's so important. I mean, I have this idea in the background, which is like, even having music, but I still haven't worked that one out. Imagine that you come in and you have this music, and then we're in there, and
like it'd be like in a beautiful
spa,
like a beautiful atmospheric.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm a great music lover, so I really would like to do that. But anyway, we're working on that. But it doesn't have to be dry. It doesn't have to be boring. I have a friend who recently bought a course. I love him, Dr. Stephen Porges. He's great, but there were a few scientists in this online course. He said to me, it was so boring. And he's a scientist, so he said, I'm used to the scientific community.
Yeah.
But it's you can make science fun and exciting, and absolutely. And you can create this community, this sense of community. So for sure, Yasmin, it can be done, and there's a lot more to do. So and really that's it from me. There's a lot more things coming up, and more things that we're involved in it. Many people to thank, many people to say, oh my God, without them we couldn't have done it. all the teachers. Marlene Jansen was in it from the beginning. Suze Ritter was in it from the beginning. Koen van der Kroon and Lise van Dam from the start. Yeah, so so yes, from the moment we founded it. But yeah, I definitely labor of love and a dream, and just like going, okay, this is having these visions, and then just going.
So, okay, so to round up then, I have two questions for you.
I am.
The first one would be, since that first day of walking into that yoga therapy training course, knowing that this is your future, what is the biggest change you have seen from then to now in the world of yoga therapy?
Okay, so the biggest change that I've seen, definitely the introduction of the mental health, for sure. The introduction of the term trauma, and the realization that for the better or for worse, and maybe it's possible we're taking it too much to the extreme. I have no idea. We will find out after my lifetime. That it's so vital and important that we take into consideration the mind when it comes to physical or physiological disease, and what's going on with the thoughts and emotions and the history of our trauma. And some people are even talking about the trauma that has been transmitted from generational to generation, and the effect that that has in our health. That is probably the most transformative change that has happened since the time that I turned up in that class. Because at the time, the mind was only just, okay, we do meditation. That was the only thing that was connected with the mind. You just do meditation and that's it. And the change has also happened in meditation. A lot of people, that hardcore meditation of, meditate for how many hours, whatever. Now we're starting to see that could be too much. We've made it more accessible. And speaking of accessibility, the other aspect that has really changed since then has been the idea of accessibility.
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah, definitely mental health and trauma and accessibility, meaning that not only the abled bodies can do this, right? Not only the flexible, the ones that can do, but we've had the incredible, it's so fascinating, Yasmin. I get the goosebumps because the first chair yoga that I ever did in my life was in my training over 20 years ago. It was not called chair yoga. We just sat in a chair. And we did it because we were learning how to work with individuals with rheumatoid arthritis, with Parkinson's, people with balance issues. There was no chair yoga at the time. Yes. We just sat on a chair. And so, to see all of that, the wonderful accessible yoga now, again, nowadays it exists as its own brand, and the fact that anybody and everybody, that's been the biggest transformation. Yes, yeah. Definitely the biggest transformation. And yoga being seen as a possible tool for improvement in our health. That's why yoga therapy is thriving now. So yeah, those are the main changes. Yeah. I feel like a dinosaur when you're asking me this question. I feel like, oh, I'm going to ask one of our elders here. So tell us,
one of our pioneers.
what used to happen when people didn't have mobile phones?
Well, I remember not having a mobile phone.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay, so then my final question. So if someone's watching this who is interested in yoga therapy but isn't sure, it sounds like there's a lot of work. A lot of work, but also perhaps they will have to put a lot of work in physically, emotionally, mentally. What would your advice be if someone's not sure but is interested and they'd like to try, check it out?
yes, check it out. It's quite interesting because I think my point of view has changed on that one. I used to be the type that would say, you got to be 100% sure, you go for it, you do it, you see it, you visualize it. This is your life purpose. So that used to be my opinion. Yeah. Self-centered, saying, okay, this is what happened to me. However, as always, I am at awe with what happens outside of me. And that is, I think that's the beauty in life, what's happening outside of you. And I see people who join like, yeah, I'm not sure if this is, and then they come to one session and then they join another one and then another module and then another module. They end up graduating and they end up working as yoga therapists. And they started just there by chance going, So my advice would be give it a go. It doesn't have to be, and now we say to our students, you don't have to commit to the full diploma. Becoming a yoga therapist or seeing that, it can be quite daunting.
Yeah.
You know it. I mean, you're in the medical system, right? You became a doctor. And I don't know, but those of us who are not in the medical profession, but we always think that doctors are almost like born. You're like 10 years old and you go, what would you like to be? I want to be a doctor. And then they end up being a doctor. And there was always one in the classroom who wanted to be a doctor and they ended up being a doctor. Or maybe the father or the mother was a doctor, kind of like a little bit like that. So it doesn't have to be that way. It can be very daunting to look at a course that is going to take a minimum of 2 years, probably 3 years of your life. Financial investment, physical investment, mental investment. Most people, when they take on yoga therapy, they already have an adult life. So what does that mean? They've got a job, they've got kids, they got whatever responsibilities. It can even put pressure on your partner, on your relationship. It's like, yeah. So not to look at it, oh my God, I got to do this, which is okay also to do. But start with something that you can already use for your, so say, for example, you do a yoga therapy foundation, or if you're interested in yoga therapy for the mind, whatever, start there and see what it does to you.
Yeah.
It's not a waste of time, because in any case, whatever you learn is going to be useful for you and for your work and your career and yourself. Start somewhere and then see what it does to you. How does it land on you? Is it something that you go, no way, I couldn't do this? Or something you go, like we recently had somebody who goes, I was here by chance and I think I'm going to book another one. I'm loving this. So, because you never know. It doesn't have to be like fireworks and, it's a little bit like people say about falling in love. Not all the best relationships are the ones where you get all the oh my God, I fell in love immediately. I knew it was him or her or they or blah, 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 blah. That doesn't give you a guarantee that will be a successful relationship. But this is a little bit the same. You don't have to go, whoa, like this, but just start. And there's many different ways that you can work as a yoga therapist. So when you do a training like this, you don't have to be a yoga therapist working in a yoga therapy setting. You could adapt it to your clinical experience as a doctor, as a physio, as a psychologist. You could introduce it in your group yoga classes. You maybe will benefit from it for your own life and your own health. We have a lot of students who say, this has transformed my life for my own health and my well-being. So that would be my advice. Don't expect like, whoa, but just start somewhere and then see where it goes. Yes. Go out on that date. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful advice. Thank you.
Yes. So, Yasmin, well, I can see that I shared a lot of information about me. Nobody asked me. You're the first person who ever asked me, so how did you start? What happened? How, a lot of people don't really know. And it's funny because a lot of people think, oh, she must come from a privileged background. Absolutely no way. I mean, we didn't have enough money to eat the day after when I grew up.
I remember the story. So through my training, I remember the story about the girl in the back during one of your classes. And you've dropped a few little tidbits in, but I think it's fascinating. It's like you said about when you're working with people, that human, those stories, it's so inspiring. And as you said, you came from, a background with very little.
Yes, and that also has added a lot to the learning. Yes, me. Because when you come from a poor background and a very underprivileged background, you learn. You have to learn about people.
Yeah. In order to get by, that emotional intelligence.
Completely. You really, it's part of the tool of surviving.
Mm.
And don't forget that I moved to a country where I didn't speak the language. So again, body language was essential. Yeah, for learning. Is this person happy, not happy? What's going on? But okay, so that is also part of it. I think that actually, rather than seeing it as a burden, it was definitely a benefit for me. The fact that it was just a question of survival. So you had to, yeah. Then you learned, yeah, from human beings because you had to survive. So yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Montserrat. That has been such a beautiful discussion. So inspiring to hear your journey, hearing so much that I don't think you've ever spoken to about with other people. And so, yeah, really grateful. And if anyone would like more information, we'll leave some links at the bottom of in the little description box.
Yes, and I think it's important to say also, Yasmin, that of course we will leave some information about the Yoga Therapy Institute, but also the IYT, because I think that it's very important to look at different schools, different ways. Everybody learns in a different way and different forms, and of course, and there are some courses that are in person as well. We don't do it in person, but definitely. So yeah, to offer as much as possible about yoga therapy and information for everybody. And thank you, Yasmin. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for getting me to talk so much.
You weren't going to get out of it.
Yeah. Oh my God. So what are you going to do for the next episode? What is because we talked about how I find your life fascinating, to say, okay, so you're a medical doctor based in the UK, and I know you have your background, but why yoga and why yoga therapy? And now you're really combining and wanting to bring yoga therapy into your work. You work in geriatrics and, you know, older care. And I think we all need to hear about that. I think people will really want to hear about that. It's very inspirational.
Thank you. I'm excited to share that, and hopefully people will learn some stuff from that as well. So
I very much think so. And more we're getting medical professionals training in yoga therapy. So
which is super exciting and just shows that there is a desire for change.
Absolutely. Yeah, for change, progression. It's called the progressive yoga therapy dialogue. Yeah? So yes, progression. Thank you, Yasmin. Thank you.
Bye.